funny that you were doing that, Violet, doing this, because I do that too when I'm waiting.
I know.
Anyways,
Too.
hey,
There's
Mashers,
no singing
welcome.
this time.
Yeah. Hey, Mashers, welcome back to the Weekly Mash. Today, we are cracking open a brand new kind of horror fantasy romance with
I'm
Violet
so excited.
Jackson, the mastermind behind These Twisted Fates, which is book 1 of the Fae Monsters series. Violet writes about survival, monsters, and fated love in a world where happily ever after comes drenched in shadows. We've been warned she's a proud book nerd and might spiral into dictionary level lore, so buckle up. Violet, welcome to the show. We are so excited that you are here with us. Would you like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your book, and then we'll try to ask you some fun questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
My name is Violet Jackson. That's my pen name. In my day job, I teach popular romance at university.
Ooh, that's cool.
Ooh.
And so when I wanted to write a book, I wanted to write something that I hadn't read yet. And I wanted to maybe make people very uncomfortable in certain ways in romance that I've been like, I don't feel like I've been made this kind of uncomfortable before. And so this series and the first book, I really like to focus on female main characters who aren't really sassy and whose growth and strength is mostly about resilience and surviving through trauma and overcoming that and building a strength that obviously in their world is not going to be physical because they're incapable of physically dominating like monsters, right? But I wanted morally black male main characters. I wanted it to be incredibly effed up and wanted to get us to a happily ever after traumatizing readers.
That's for traumatizing readers.
Lots of traumatizing of readers. That's the goal.
Yeah.
I love it.
Goodness. I love that.
I like morally black.
They were morally gray. And then I had multiple readers say it was morally black. And my other friend who writes, she's currently writing her first book right now that's very different, but also weird. And she told me, you can't have him do this and say it's morally gray. And I was like, okay, but I thought morally gray was like Thanos in Marvel, where like he's gonna wipe out 50% of the universe. He thinks he has a really good reason to do it, right? Like he has this sort of altruistic reasoning, right? It's just a horrible thing to do. I was like, morally black is like they're just doing it because they want to be horrible or they're like a fascist. And she was like, no, don't say that. And I was like, okay. So apparently the first one, he's morally black. And I'm a little worried because they kind of get worse.
Oh.
So, in different ways, worse.
What would be the level after black? Like, we need a definition.
Yeah. So a level after black, what I ended up doing was thinking like, in Parks and Rec, when Tom Haverford has like all the different shades of black silk laid out.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He's like, they're so all different. And he's like obsidian, like onyx, Armani void. And so I'm like, okay, well, Rhaegar in the first one is probably obsidian. He's like genuinely like really sweet. Like the love story is kind of sweet. But the things he's willing to do to make sure they end up safe together are terrible things, right? But he doesn't enjoy doing them. Book 2, which is about the girl's half brother, he's a little bit more willing to be crazy. He maybe doesn't totally enjoy it, but he doesn't feel bad about it the way book 1 kind of does. And then book 3 used to be really, really sweet, but given the context of the world has become a sadistic kind of person in order to protect the person that he's meant to be with, right? So they're never mean or necessarily, well, book 2 kind of is, but there's reasons, cruel to the actual person, like the FMC, because I didn't like toxic, which is what, I sometimes like to read it in dark romance, but I'm not going to write it. And so none of them are like that, but there's like, it's a horrible, brutal world. Like they're not going to be good, wonderful people that you would take home to your mother in a contemporary society, right? Like also they're monsters. So that would just raise questions.
I'm still over here dreaming about a morally black man.
Well, monster too, right? So like I decided I wanted to do orcs, but I wanted to do orcs like Tolkien orcs, but not like Tolkien orcs, right? But like with the idea of, so like nerd moment, the word orc that Tolkien uses is from the Old English orcnea, which means monster, right? That's all it means. So he didn't make it up. But I wanted it to be like, okay, these don't look like D&D orcs with the tusks. They're more like the Tolkien corrupted elf kind of thing, even though their skin is like different shades of green depending on what like they're from. But I was like, I also have this impression that we have tons of pretty Fae boys, and yet Fae who are immortal and beautiful somehow are not also like raving eugenicists. And I'm always like, they totally would be though, right? And my friend who writes is like, you're so cynical. And I'm like, they would be, right? They live 5,000 years and they look perfect and they're strong. They're going to be like wiping out humans left and right. And so I was like, no, what if orcs are like basically genetically engineered weapons for Fae? And then maybe they wiped out Fae because they were like, oh, well, we'll just get rid of you, right? And so there's no females because it's like Jurassic Park where they like engineered them to only produce males so that they didn't have to worry about population control. And then the wall that's around where the humans live, that the humans are living within now and have developed ways of actually defeating to some degree orcs using poison so that it's put them on a more level playing field. So now they breed orcs and are horrible to women. They're like originally were meant to be kept in the wall by Fae as like a breeding population so they could just like keep them in there and then pull out what they needed. And so now, thousands of years later, it's all effed up and humans hate orcs and think they're more like D&D orcs, but brainless. And it starts there. And it's terrible because I decided, what if we took like patriarchy, but to an extreme where there's so many women, like to male ratio with humans, that men just treat them like they're kind of interchangeable to the point that you're property and he can kill you if he wants. Like it's nobody's going to get anything, right? Which is why it's, you know, maybe semi-affected by the fact that I read The Handmaid's Tale when I was 12.
Yeah, probably.
I've been like, I was raised a fundy evangelical homeschooler, but then they let me read that at age 12. And I've had moments where I'm like, I think it was on a list of like classic books that was recommended. So like I'd read Paradise Lost when I was 11 and I was like writing Paradise Lost fanfic where like Satan falls in love with Eve and was hiding it because I was like, my parents are going to think this is so terrible.
Right.
But The Handmaid's Tale, I've been like, that's probably too early. And then other friends have been like, or was it the right time? Like, was it just the right time to like get you to start worrying about
it all depends on your maturity level too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I found it disturbing given how I was raised and I started noticing things and getting uncomfortable, which might be the autism with the pattern recognition being hyper excited. But yeah, so it's like, I'll write a book and it'll be horrific and scary to people.
Good. That's why we're friends, I'm telling you.
Yeah. So let's get into some fun questions about you in the book. Your tagline says it all: a violent world, a dark love, a twisted fate. If you had to make a warning label for your book, what would it say?
Do not open.
Open at your own risk.
I had to do a do not read this book video because I noticed back when I was still getting ARC reviews that I had a number of people like withdrawing from it and they would leave messages saying that they could not get past chapter 10. And I was like, okay, well, that's mentioned though in the trigger warnings. Like it's very clear what they're going to encounter, but a lot of them were like really horrified and upset. And I realized that there's sometimes like, and I've noticed more and more that dark romance authors have started to split their trigger warnings list. So they will do, these are triggers and then these are tropes or kinks. And I realized that a lot of people read my trigger warnings list and interpreted some of those as tropes or kinks entirely because frequently when they show up, that's what they are, right? They're not depicted as horrific. And so you're supposed to feel titillated. And so if you read chapter 10 thinking this is supposed to be kinky when it's written to not be, you are going to think this is the most horrific thing that anybody's trying to make you read. And so that made me do a video where I was like, okay, this is not it. Just make sure you know this is supposed to be a very horrific book. It's fine to tap out, which is what I've told ARC readers for book 2. Like I give them everything and then I say, it's totally fine. Just like, let me know and I'll find someone to tag in if I can. But it's, I don't care if people put it down or like can't go any further with this. Right.
Okay. You've said 12-year-old Violet mashed together Game of Thrones, Paradise Lost, and The Handmaid's Tale, just like you were mentioning, that later evolved into this series. What's it like to look back at the childhood spark and see it grow into a whole published world that you've created?
Very weird, I think, because when I was that age, I didn't think I would. People would say you should do more writing when I was little because I wasn't interested in math or anything like that. And I was always reading things, but never the stuff that I was supposed to be reading that would have been for my age. I was reading all of that stuff. And then like Anne Bishop's Black Jewel stuff, which is really dark and kind of messy and questionable in some areas, I'm sure. And then like Patricia Varian's swashbuckling historical adventure romances and things like that. But I didn't think writing sounded interesting other than telling myself stories. And I would write stories to tell myself stories, not to tell other people stories. And I wanted to be a vet. So it was very
A little
weird.
different.
It was a little different. And then I was a dance major in college and then had to switch at the last minute to be English and then went to grad school and then was like, well, I'm here. I might as well teach. And so now I teach.
Very cool.
But it never occurred to me to write as a career at that age, like 12, I wasn't. And then like I would have been thrown as 12-year-old me if you told me when I was like in my early 20s, I would be ghostwriting Arc Mafia MMF romance, like for like a weekly deck, right? Which is what I did for a number of years, which made decent, side money while I was adjuncting. But it definitely gave me the preference to not have an editor breathing down my neck about things.
Yeah.
Because I've done one of my strategies with writing and plotting is I'll always go to one of my writer friends and I'll ask them, okay, like this is what's happened so far. 5 things you think is going to happen next, most likely. And then they'll tell me and I'll be like, okay, not going to do any of those things. I'm going to find something totally different to do. And I'll do it half the time knowing that like a larger number of readers would prefer I did one of those 5 things and are probably going to be annoyed at me for not. But I like we didn't see that coming. Or it got even weirder than I thought you were going to make it, or it got darker than I thought you were going to make it. And so I think 12-year-old me would love being able to say, give an editor the finger and be like, no, I'm going to do what I want anyway. And I know people might not like it, but I'm going to enjoy myself.
Well, and that's the thing is it's your story. That's one thing. So Miranda and I are beta readers for a book that's getting ready to come out. And one thing that's kind of bugged us with the other beta readers is they want to change the whole book. And I'm like, okay, you can put your opinions on there, but don't get mad if she doesn't take that in account. Because this is her story. This is your story. So people getting mad at you for you telling the story how you see it, like it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed that with students when we have them talk about literature and what they think is good literature. And we talk about like book reviews or I'll talk about beta readers and we'll think about that it is so rare that what you as a non-expert are flagging as bad is objectively bad as opposed to it doesn't hit your preference and resonate with you. So for you it's bad. Like it is not a good experience. You are not enjoying this. There are, however, people that it did resonate with, which means it was good. Like Twilight or Fourth Wing, I don't like those books. I did not enjoy them. But I think they're amazing books, right? Like everybody is like, oh, this is so poorly written. I'm like, it really isn't. It's really well done. And it hits with the audience that it wants to hit with, right?
Exactly.
That's great. And I do notice students will be very resistant to that idea. And I think beta readers can sometimes go the same way because they want a different story. And it's like, maybe I can't give it to you though, because I'm not the right person to give you that one. That sounds great though. Like you should write that story. But yeah, that's an interesting thing to notice as a beta reader.
It just bugs me.
I know. Yeah.
At first it was all fun and there was like, it was just comments like annotating the book as you went. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I'm like putting in all my snarky little comments with it. And then there was like, you should have this page up here and this page back here. And I'm like, no, it doesn't make sense that way.
Right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I noticed that too. But then you have like especially because this is our first time beta reading, so it's been an interesting experience. And you don't want to like ruffle feathers of the other beta readers. So you don't want to be like, no, I don't think you're right there. So you just kind of like move through it and just leave the comment. But I hope that authors like know that their work is their work and you don't have to change it. It's just someone else's perspective or opinion. And that's
Yeah.
fine.
The
Yeah,
cool
I
thing is,
do notice.
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No,
No,
you go.
you go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say I have noticed, like, whenever I've watched indie authors on TikTok talk about it, they will really desperately try to please all of their beta readers as if those are, like, their marketing editors.
Right.
And I feel bad because I'm thinking that means there can be too many cooks in the kitchen. And if you're
Mhm.
getting a ton of things, you can't make everybody happy. Like, no book is for. And so I'm relieved I had like years of ghostwriting to know it's like
Yeah.
it's a good book. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's people might not everybody's gonna like it, but it's fine,
Mhm.
right? And I picked beta readers more recently that are colleagues, and they know she's not going to change a thing if we're like, don't
Mhm.
do that. We
Right.
can just tell her how to mitigate upsetting readers as
Yeah.
best as possible, right?
I was just gonna say that the cool thing about our journey as a beta reader is we developed a relationship with the author before we got the book.
Mhm.
So, like, we'll personally message her and be like, hey, ignore this comment. It sounds great. Or,
Right.
she asks us a lot about how we feel, like, outside of, like, the beta program that we're using and stuff. So I like that we developed that relationship with her before we got the book because, I
Yeah,
don't.
well, then she knows what you like more and that how you're
Mhm.
approaching it. And it can also help with anything that's critical and constructive
Mhm.
because you know
Yeah.
the spirit it's coming in instead of
Yeah.
feeling like suddenly yelling at you about something.
And
Exactly.
it's nice
Yeah.
because I'm there for the story and Miranda's there for all, like,
And
the
I'm
grammar
there.
issues.
I know, I'm like, insert a comma here. You have an extra space here. And I'm like, I hope I'm not putting too much in here. She's just like annoyed with me. Like, I'll get to that later. Quit telling me.
I just,
I
like, zooming
appreciate
through it.
whenever anybody gives me this stuff where it's like, did you know your formatting got really effed up over here? And I'm like, actually, dyslexia meant I probably didn't. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh,
Okay,
boy.
so as you said, you love a black character. What's so fun about writing characters who walk right past the moral line and never look back?
I think it's because I like to basically see what they might do if I back them into corners. And then I like to see what readers' reaction is going to be to that, like how much it takes for them to decide they can't with this character anymore. And I realized someone did a live reading, Black Cat 42 on Twitch did a live reading of the book, and I realized that she'd let me go awfully far with Rhaegar because when we get towards the end and Mia is having this major problem of forgiving him for doing this one thing, which is to keep her safe, but she's like, okay, but I didn't know you were going to do this thing, right? And I can't with this. She was like, my God, girl, just get over it. Like in this point, I was like, and here I was spending this whole time being like, readers are going to want her to resist, like being okay with this way longer. But it did work, apparently, that they felt he was backed into a corner and made an inevitable sort of bad choice, but only option, I guess. But I like seeing how people react to that. And I like playing with characters who are complicated, where they seem like they, in another world, would be a very gentle and sweet person, but circumstance and environment has produced a person who is trying to survive it in a very different way, and seeing how they react and deal with what comes towards them.
Interesting. Yeah. I love that you're getting different responses than you expected, too. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did notice a number of even like beta and arc readers, they were getting impatient with her trauma brain. And I would have these moments where they'd be like, oh, but does she have to think about it every other page? And I was like, well, yeah, you would. Like, and they're like, that's
Right?
so
That's
irrational.
real
And I'm
life.
like, trauma brain is irrational. Like, she's
Mhm.
consciously recognizing this is wrong. And I can see
Yeah.
why it gets frustrating for readers. One of my friends told me that they were like, I mean, just shit or get off the pot. And I was like, okay, but trauma brain doesn't do that, right? And so it does have like slow moments that some people are really into because they're into the psychology of it. And other people are like, oh my God, can we like somebody throw a pie or a sword or something? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not into that as much. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, no, we're going to have like psychological moments and like really sweet, quiet moments. And then somebody's going to get murdered, right? Like that's,
Oh, that's
Oh,
fun.
I love it. All right. So your Oh, Ashley's skipping down. I was like, wait a minute. I was going to read this question. And then she like
Go
went
ahead.
down to the other question. Okay. Because I want to know the answer to this. So your heroine swears she'll never see her monster as anything but her worst nightmare. How does writing a romance between enemies where love and horror constantly are tangled make that HEA at the end even more satisfying?
I think because it feels like it was really deeply fought for and won, right? Like you have characters who, like, for their book in particular, are enemies largely, it turns out, on her part and her not being aware of certain things, but for a really good reason, right? Like they go through something incredibly traumatic together. He's the one who is traumatizing her, even though he is also a victim of the same thing. Um, and it feels as though you desperately want them to get together as you gradually will see characters like that you're like, oh, they're meant to be together. This would be good. But you understand why it's not happening. And when it finally does get there, I feel like because you didn't think it would happen and you weren't sure it was going to, it feels more like cathartic in certain ways. Because you're like, oh my God, it was so horrible, but now it's good again, right? And I wanted like a Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, but it has a happily ever after, right? Because I was so into those books as a kid and I loved Daenerys. And I was like, this is not fair. She's not going to be given a happy ending for this. And I
I
was like, no,
know.
but I want all the trauma, but like happy in the end, right?
Yeah.
Because for my own reasons, I don't read non-romance anymore for the most part, just because my little PTSD brain can't handle knowing, I don't know, they might kill everybody. And then that's going to be my entire month, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
traumatize me in the dark romance. I know everything's going to be fine in the end. And I can get my catharsis right there.
Right. That was like when we were reading The Perfect Child. It leaves off at such an odd place, which is good for that particular book and that genre. But for us, when we're used to like having some type of closure at the end and it's left like your mind guessing, I was like,
And
no,
there's
I
not even
can't
a
do
book
that
2.
again. I
There's no
know,
book
I
2.
know.
And it just leaves
Like,
it there.
And it's worse when
why?
you don't, it would be worse than them telling you the horrible thing that happened. If your like mind is coming up with all of the terrible, no, I can't do that.
Right?
It's
Yeah,
brilliant, but I can't do
agree.
it.
Exactly.
Can't do
Yep.
it. I still think about that book.
I know. Well, that's where the opinion and the perception and your personal reading, like what you enjoy reading, comes into play too. Because there's probably people that love the way that they ended.
Oh yeah.
But not me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. My husband loves reading like legit horror. Right. And one of my friends does too. And so they were both reading Tender is the Flesh recently.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he's finished with it. But my friend told me how it ended. And I was like, okay, based on what he was describing, I was thinking this might actually have a happily ever after. And she told me, and I was like, oh my God. Like, no. I was like, I cannot do that. Like, I love the horror elements there. I want to swipe some, but I do not want it to end that way. No.
Same thing with, I don't know if you've read it, Under Your Scars.
Wait a minute.
I don't.
I've heard it talked about a lot. I don't think I've read some. Have you ever read any Pepper Winters?
Actually, I thought I had one.
Because that's what Under Your Scars kind of struck me as, where it's like sometimes they do a happily ever after, but they don't always. And I was like, I don't think I can pick that one up because I'm afraid it's going to
That one
destroy.
ruined me forever.
Did it not have a happily ever after?
There's no happily ever after.
Yeah. Then that's no, I can't do that.
But I didn't know. Everybody said the ending was like, I don't know. They said it was like terrible, or like they didn't give like a detail that there was no happily ever after. They just said it was a bad ending. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to read this book. No.
Right?
I didn't know they meant that kind of a bad ending.
There's two like that are by authors I love, but I refuse to read. And that's The Dustwalker by Tiffany Roberts, because the epilogue apparently like destroys people. And I was like, I can't do that. Like, and people are like, just don't read the epilogue. I'm like, but I'll know it's there. Like,
And you'll still want to read it to figure out why.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then Pen Pal by JT
Oh, yeah.
Geisinger. And I started it and I started to get suspicious on like page 30. And I looked it up and I was like, I knew it. And I was like, I can't do this.
I feel
Throw it that way.
Pen Pal kind of has a happy ending. It's just a twisted happy ending.
It's just
Good enough.
It's
I
like
know.
in a sense
I was
kind of
completely
bullshit.
blindsided by that one.
That's one of the things my husband and I both teach literature. And it's our worst problem in movies and in books that we'll just be the ones sitting there and like, it's going to do this. No, it's going to do this. It's going to do this. And that destroys the fun in certain books because I'll be like, no, I'm like, because your pattern recognition is starting to notice those things. And I
Mhm.
picked up on it and I was like, no, it saved me
Yeah.
in that sense instead of ruining it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband's actually really good at that too. We were watching like Yellowstone and he's like, "Watch, this is going to happen." And I had already
Wow.
watched it, so I knew. And he's like, "This is the next scene, watch." And I'm like, "How in the world did you know that was going to happen?"
If you watch enough stories or you read enough
Right?
stories, you're like, there's only so many ways this can go.
So
Yeah.
you tucked the dictionary into the back of the book instead of the front. That's cool. I like that. What was that, a reader experience decision or more of a survive the world first and then decode it later vibe?
Maybe a little bit of both because I don't really do total dual point of view because I know people like it. I'm more of a immerse me in one character for the most part, and then I'll eventually give you the other after, we've resolved some of the mystery that's going on. And I wanted people to feel as confused as she would be because she doesn't know that language. Heck, she didn't even know that they could talk, right? And here she's dealing with this entire language happening. And I like the sound of it, right? And so I was like, no, I'm going to put it in the back because part of it is I don't want you to be able to know and I want you to feel as totally confused and frustrated as she is. And the other part was there's spoilers. Like you learn
Okay.
3 different twists if you understand the language within like the first few pages of them starting to speak it, right? You even kind of get spoilers towards like book 3 in like early on.
Oh.
And so I was like, no, I don't want them to. And some readers really were miserable because of it. One of my friends even was like, your little note at the beginning saying some ambitious readers might try to translate. And she was like, me just totally skipping over all of that. And I was like, I didn't even read it. I was just like, what? They're still talking. But other people felt like that they had kind of started to learn some of the language by the end. And I was like, that's what I wanted
That's
to happen. Cool. I had too much fun with that. But yeah, I wanted the experience to be immersive and confusing to some degree.
Note to self, do not look at the dictionary when reading the first book.
Don't. Well, and I tried to
self.
make it really hard by only giving you like the infinitives of the verbs, not the way they're actually fully conjugated. That way, if you were trying to be ambitious, you'd still get a little confused, like with
Sneaky.
exactly how it was going. Right? Horrible. Had too much fun anticipating like 5 readers that might.
That's so cool, though, to be able to create something so immersive. That's amazing. I could not. I couldn't.
In my hyperfixation.
7,802. I actually make a terrible author.
I want to go back and look at our videos because you always come up with some like random number. And I want to see if they're actually like in descending order or ascending order, or if they're just completely like all over the place. Because that would be really funny to see.
It would be really funny if it was in descending order.
It would be.
Raise questions about time travel.
You don't need to know.
Okay, let's do a quick fire round. So just whatever comes to mind with your answer. The first one, if these twisted fates were turned into a horror romance video game, what would be the first boss battle and what would it look like? First boss battle would be Soldor, who's actually the MMC for book 3, but is horrible in book 1. And so that would be the first one. A couple of my beta readers got really upset when they found out he was an MMC. Because they're like, no, I hate him. And I was like, I know. Trust the process.
That's why.
Yeah, I love it though. For all the wrong reasons. But yeah.
Okay. Pick your survival kit. 1 crow, 1 cup of coffee, and 1 random object from your desk. And which of your characters would last the longest with it? 1 crow? Like one of the ones in my yard?
I don't know. See, this is where the questions are like.
Okay. Crow, if we're talking like the black bird, would probably be Clovis because he eats the most peanuts when I leave them.
That's cool.
Fully energized. What was the next one? Item from my desk?
1 cup of coffee.
1 cup of coffee. Like flavor?
Sure.
I'm autism right now. The questions need to be so hyper specific. Okay. blonde roast coffee.
Mm.
It tastes
And
stronger.
then one random object from your desk.
Paperweight.
And then which of your characters would last the longest with it?
Soldor.
I
Use
know, that
all
was
of
a
it.
tricky question, Miranda.
That was a very tricky question, and I didn't even remember what. Who
That was a
knows?
fun one, though.
Favorite romance trope that you'd defend in a bar fight?
That one's hard. That's what she said. Enemies to lovers when they're actually enemies.
Yes.
Like actually enemies, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a good reason for them to actually hate the other person, because I don't like when I am pitched enemies to lovers and they're just snarky and there's sexual tension. I'm like, well, then you're just two hot people who, have attitude problems, right? Like that's
called
not
banter.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
banter. That's Elizabeth and Dark,
Exactly.
who have contrived a reason to hate each other, right?
Mhm.
But don't really, and it's largely based on, having their feelings hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, I defend the actual hatred.
Yeah, I like it. Fantasy creature you'd most like to go on a coffee date with. Any fantasy creature. I can't even talk.
One of Kresley Cole's demons.
Mm.
Kresley Cole writes really good paranormal romance. She's actually the OG. She's one of the, if not the first person to make a werewolf the male main character instead of a vampire in an adult romance.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
She's like, and that was 2006, A Hunger Like No Other. But her Immortals After Dark series is like if you made the Marvel Cinematic Universe into paranormal romance novels. It's amazing. It's funny. It's heartwarming. Yeah, her demons, super hot, would do that.
Interesting. And then book you'd happily rewrite into dark fantasy if you could steal it.
I feel like I'm going to get The Tyrant by Patricia Varian. That woman is amazing and brilliant. She's the person who developed all kinds of conventions for romance, doesn't get credit for it. Like dual point of view is because of Patricia Varian, right? Nobody did that before. And she did it in 1978. But her books are so sweet. And I'm like, no. Some of these need to be a little darker.
I love your literature teacher point of view coming out.
I know.
It's really cool.
Sorry. I did an interview the other day about Comic-Con, because I guess Comic-Con has romantasy at it. And so a podcast for KPBS in San Diego wanted to interview about that. And so I had to talk about that for a long time. And so I'm still in like,
hey, I like it. I love it. We're both teachers. I'm a middle school teacher. I do not have that level of confidence in talking about like classic or modern literature. So I'm nerding. It's cool.
You don't want me to talk about classic stuff because I hate most of them.
I don't really enjoy them either.
Really, everybody who's like, I should read Great Expectations. So I'm like, should you? Because it sucks. Like, it is really boring.
Spark Notes saved me in high school having to read that book.
So I read Middlemarch later, but Middlemarch is a book. My husband and I were talking about it today by George Eliot. It's like frickin' this thick. Nothing happens in that book. It is a book with no plot. And we had to read it a week in graduate school and then write a paper on it. And I didn't read more than like the first 2 chapters. And then I wrote the paper and it was fine because I was like, I know what's going to happen. But I hate so much classic literature. Once you get past the Old Norse stuff and all the like gory stuff from like the Anglo-Saxon period, like I'm like, now we're boring.
Right?
Yeah.
Even
Jane Austen. Jane Austen. I resent Jane Austen and I think she hates women. Nobody agrees with me on that.
I felt the same way.
That's always my like immediate, like Lydia in Pride and Prejudice is basically her nod to the seduction novel where like the young woman runs off and then she dies of consumption and apologizes for her father being right the whole time, right? And I'm like, no, Lydia is just that. And then all these other women basically have to get like fixed and married. And I was like, no, don't like it. I like Anne Radcliffe.
Yeah.
She had haunted castles and stuff.
Literally 3 days ago, a colleague was talking about how they were reading Middlemarch, and I was like, oh, I'm going to add that to my TBR. And now I feel like I'm going to take it off.
It has some funny melodramatic moments, right? But if you're going to read a George Eliot, then read like Mill on the Floss because it's just funny. Like in that one, George Eliot is like has this like recurring thing where the mother is always warning the kids, like, you'll drown in the river, kids, like, you'll shoot your eye out or something like that. And then in the end, when they're adults, they drown in the river. Like, that's dark humor.
Yeah.
Middlemarch just maudlin and dragging, and everybody's miserable for no reason. But yeah, I'm not into it. Not into it.
Oh gosh, so funny.
Okay, Violet, that was the last of our questions. We want to thank you so much for geeking out with us in the best possible way. These Twisted Fates is packed with monsters, trauma, twisted fate, and somehow a happily ever after, because like Violet said, we can't do it without a happily ever after.
Right.
Mashers, if you love your romance dark, unsettling, and a little bit nerdy, you're going to want this one on your shelf, so go pick it up. Until next time, may your crows be friendly, your coffee be strong, and your dictionary stay in the back of your book. See you guys later.